Now, I like to consider myself a rational optimist. Optimism gives me the will and the power to look for the future, a positive future and positive outcomes, while rationalism keeps me grounded in things that are possible, achievable. And it's important to have this tool set when we are aiming for the future, so we're not believing that it's all blue skies and easy sailing. But there will be storms, but there's a way out of them. And with this tool set, I set aims for the future that are worthy of aiming for. For example, all my life I've dreamt of living in the Star Trek world because A, I love the technology, B, I love the society that they have, which is almost like utopia, right? And C, they have science and technology that just blows your mind. And I really would like to have access to all of that. Unfortunately for all of us alive today, essentially, that future is outside of our lifespan, which is terrible. It's A, too far in the future, and B, traveling across the cosmos takes cosmic amounts of time. We don't have that kind of time as mortals here. So what can we do? Well, we can't speed up technology, really. We can't bring the universe closer. Well, what about the third factor? Can we fiddle with that, maybe? Can we fiddle with how much time we have? I believe we can. And as other speakers have pointed, I think it lies in the future. But before we get into the topic of life extension, we should definitely clarify some terms because there's a lot of confusion in this field, or about this field. For example, or for one, lifespan is the amount of time an organism, maximum amount of time an organism can be alive, whereas health span, within that, is the amount of time it can be at optimal health. Now, we have no interest in expanding lifespan, that is to be getting older for longer and longer, but all of them are me. Instead, what we're aiming for is returning to our previous state. Getting a treatment when we're seeing the effects of aging, and then returning to young adulthood again. And once we have this technology, we can just keep on repeating. Get older, refresh, get the treatment, and be you again, the healthy young you. Of course, to want to get to the future, you must believe that it's a future you really want to live in. If it's a terrible future, a dystopia, then you're not going to be striving to get there. So let's look at some of the things that people think of when they think about the future. One of which is that we're ruining the planet, right? And one of the main reasons I believe for that is our short-term thinking. We know we have an expiration date. So we can say, well, I've had a ball here, but the cleaning up is up to you guys. I'm out. I won't be around by the time shit hits the fan, pardon my French. But what about if we don't have an expiration date? We don't know when we're going to die anymore. If we extend our lives indefinitely, then you cannot think like that anymore. You know you'll be around. You have to make sure that things remain in a state that you want to see them in. Just like, leaving a room. You tell your kids, leave your room in a way that you want to enter it. Don't leave a mess. But what about overpopulation? Clearly that's a problem. If nobody dies anymore, what are we going to do? Well, I've taken this graph. Some of you might recognize it from Hans Rosling's presentations and Factfulness. They use the same Gapminder site to generate their animated graphs. And I've taken one of them that shows basically babies per woman on the horizontal axis, and because I'm talking about life extension, so life expectancy on the vertical. Now, obviously, there's no causation between the two, but the correlation is kind of strong. Now, I'll start the animation, and then you can see the years go by. There'll be an obvious dip from World War I and World War II, but otherwise, there is a clear trend. Basically, all regions of the world are heading the same way. They're heading towards longer life and fewer babies per woman, which is, in a trend, the good news, right? But I would like to point out one thing, though. There is something called replacement level fertility, and that's defined at 2.1 babies per woman, roughly. Depends on a lot of things, but around there. Now, if you look at the graph, a lot of countries have gone beyond that point. And you know what that means? That means populations there are shrinking. So once everybody moves there, we basically will be getting fewer and fewer by default. So I think, and this is an argument for life extension, this is the best time to work on this. We're not there yet, but we will be. Everything is heading that way. So we need life extension essentially to have enough of us around. I don't want to lose, populations in different regions. I think that mixture that we have today is great. Let's maintain it. Okay, but if we're around for so long, won't it get boring? I honestly heard it's often. That's why I thought about putting it here. I honestly can't imagine getting bored. I mean, we're not going to become the Star Trek character Q, who's traveled space and time in every direction, has seen everything that will ever happen in the universe. We'll still be mortal. In fact, we'll still be subject to fast-moving things, whether it's a truck or a supernova explosion. I mean, if we're near either of those, that will be the end. But we can be immortal, that is resistant to aging and disease. And about getting bored, I mean, there are worlds, three sections of the world that we have yet to explore, and they are all infinite, essentially. One is the physical world. We've barely scratched the surface in that. 50% of this planet is still unmapped, the oceans, that is. We've only done 20% of those. And then we haven't gone to other planets, we haven't left the solar system, we haven't reached out in the galaxy, and hopefully, if we're fast enough, reach other galaxies before they fly too far away from us. But then there's also the inner world to explore. Who has spent a lifetime meditating? No one? But I mean, if really meditating on a hilltop, for example, I mean, if you have endless time, you can actually spend a lifetime doing one of these things and still have a lifetime to do something else. Learn all the dances in the world, drink off your craziest dream, you can do it. Cultures, languages, I mean, there's so much to explore. And then there is the combination of the two, the virtual world, which we're just scratching the surface of, where imagination sets the limit of what we can create and physically sense. I mean, that's going to be mind-blowing once it becomes real enough to fool our senses. But this is just all a pipe dream, right? It'll never happen. BS. Where is it? No. I've taken this little infographic from Lifespan.io, which is basically a site dedicated to crowdfunding projects into longevity research. Here you can see every row is a project, a research project, and then each one is categorized into groups that are attacking a certain hallmark of aging. For example, genomic instability. And each column here is basically which phase it's in. The first, the pinkish column, is when it's like a test tube, just a viability test. And the last one is when it gets released, when it's ready to be a product. Of course, we have one issue. This takes a heck of a long time. As I've recently heard at Undoing Aging conference, it's 17 years from first column to last. But luckily for us, they didn't start yesterday. This has been going on for quite a while. And we've all seen the headlines about, yeast cells, worms, and mice who've been lucky enough to live 30, 50 years longer, percent longer. So it's soon going to be our turn. It's getting there. But we have two issues to worry about, those of us who are sitting here today or listening to me. One of them is that these technologies are still in the future and that no single treatment will be enough. If we want to hack aging and create that treatment that gives us the rejuvenation possibility, we actually need a treatment that tackles all the hallmarks, all of those groups in the previous slide. And that we don't know when that will come. We don't have a deadline or a release date for that. Two, and this is our problem, we have to be in a good enough shape on that date when that happens to apply the treatment on ourselves. And what guarantees that we will be in that shape? We have a healthcare system where everything, breakthroughs come from forgotten windows and contaminated petri dishes. I'm talking about penicillin, the discovery of penicillin. And we have a healthcare system, or rather a sick care system, which is reactive. We wait for symptoms to appear, and then we deal with them. And we have these generic metrics to put everybody into and say, all right, you're in that zone, you're good. Now we're heading towards a future, and technology is changing rapidly, where we'll have access to technology that's monitoring us all the time. I mean, some gadgets are already doing it, but just narrow bits and pieces. And they're not really working together yet. But we're getting there, where we'll be able to deal with problems before even symptoms appear. But the systems that we're in are slow. And relying on that might not give you the time that you need to get to life extension technologies. So it is kind of in your hands to get proactive. And we have tools, as I said before, that are already available today, but unfortunately not part of a healthcare system. That waits us to get sick and say, I don't feel so good, can you do something with me? Whereas instead, you could be proactive and start measuring yourself. Now there's two aspects of our health that are important. A, what you were born with, your DNA essentially, and B, how your body is currently. And that you can find out from basically a blood test. Now both of those are easily accessible to all of us. You can sign up online, you get a kit delivered in your mail for DNA tests, you get a saliva sample in the mail back and send it to them, and a couple of months later or weeks later, you go online and find out what you inherited, what your diseases you're disposed of, not disposed of, but what you've inherited. And if you want to take a blood test to find out where your body is currently, then you can easily sign up again online, go to your local health center, and actually have yourself tested, and then they'll give you the results back. And then you can take these results, go to a third-party site, yeah, it is kind of like that for now, and they'll tell you the combination of your DNA and your blood, so what do you need to do to improve your life? They give you direct tips about how to improve your health. Now, I've taken a very simple example of this because this one is easy to show on a slide. From my DNA, I learned that I have a genetic deficiency for vitamin D. So I went and did the blood test, and it was confirmed. The very first dot there was the very first time I went to do a blood test. But then I went again and again, and obviously I've listened to the recommendation. I started taking supplements, and also the other recommendation that you should be in the sun 15, 20 minutes a day. I did those, and look, now I'm in the optimal zone. So it works. I've tried to test it, but obviously this is just a tiny sample of what you can learn from your DNA. There's a lot more. For example, I learned that I have an increased risk for lung cancer and obesity, diabetes. Now those required a bit bigger changes in my lifestyle than just taking a supplement. I've had to give up my love for craft beer, for example, which was a pain. But the pay will be so much greater, right? I have to give up craft beer now because I'm not good with moderation. I could easily cut it out completely, but I could never get myself to only have one a week, for example. So I just said no. Plus, drinking was always linked with smoking, you know, parties. So I said, okay, I have to change my life because after I get to life extension, I can have all the craft beer I want, but I have to get there. I really want to make sure I get there. And I have to find my Achilles heel. And this was one of them. So to get there, I've given up on some things, but I know it's tough. And when you're on your own journey and you find that you have to make this sacrifice, it's going to be hard to give up some things, some comforts, some bad habits. You're just like, oh, I'll be fine. Well, find the data and make sure you'll be fine. But to give yourself a bit of an edge, because you need a bit of a push. I needed a bit of a push. I need to believe in the future that I want to get to. So to give you a bit of an edge, I thought we could use the best tool we have to enable ourselves, which is our imagination. It's in your head, and it gives you the power to bridge the gap between current you and future you, the one that you're not willing to do everything for because he'll be fine or she'll be fine. But let's connect the two now. Take a moment, if you're okay with it, close your eyes and imagine yourself in the future. Also imagine some wildest fantasy goal that you've ever had. I don't know, for me it's reaching another planet with life on it. But for you it could be climbing the highest mountain, learning all the dances, whatever your wildest dream is, imagine it. And imagine your future self standing there, having just achieved it. Do you feel the hair standing up on your arms? You've achieved something that was unbelievable. You never thought you could do it, but you've done it. You feel the relief, the rush. Put your hands up and say, I did it! Come on, I want to hear you. I did it! Yes! Now you can open your eyes. With that image in the back of your head, connecting you to that future self that wants to survive to make sure it happens, do it. Stick with the plan, find out what your Achilles heel is, and make sure you are alive and well enough in that on the future date when finally you can take the treatment and extend your life. It will be an amazing journey, trust me. Trust me. Now, one thing before I go, I really, really have to beg you, do not die of something stupid until then. And by stupid, I mean something that is easily preventable. Because there are so many lifestyle choices that we make that are leading to us getting ill. But we could totally avoid them if we just if we just wanted to, if we just tried and strive for this future self. I think that was it, actually. So thank you for listening, and see you out there.